Hi there, everyone. We are going to begin this session. Welcome to this Building Smart International Standards Summit Masterclass on ETIM 9 in the bSDD. Our presenter is Jeroen van der Holst, Community Director of ETIM International. He has a fair few slides to get through today, so just stay with us on that and we'll try and address all the questions at the end of the presentation. I'll just make you aware of our antitrust code of conduct. Building Smart is committed to ensuring participation in the development of standards is unrestricted, and the process for their adoption is transparent, and standards that are developed do not favor any particular provider and are open, non-binding, and accessible to all. Thank you, and I'll now hand over.
Okay, good morning still. My name is Jeroen van der Holst. I'm the Community Director of ETIM International. I have a confession to make. I can't draw anything in 3D, but I do know everything about product data. My background is marketing communication. I worked with a fairly large international company, and I was always responsible for supplying data to wholesalers, installers, but also to BIM modelers. So today we're going through everything I know about ETIM, and we only have about 90 minutes, and I have about 90 slides. So the pace is on. If you have any questions, you can find me on LinkedIn. Please contact me, and we'll sort it out. If we have time left, I'd be glad to handle all the questions afterwards. Okay, so let's start. For today, we have a lot of topics because I have no idea what your knowledge is about ETIM. Some people I know, they'll have to sit through the boring stuff that they already know. But we'll just start from the beginning. We'll start with an overview of ETIM International, our data model structure, some use cases, our governance, our change processes, the exchange formats that we know that can comprise ETIM data, the available tooling that we have for implementation and maintenance. I would also like to discuss something that might interest you as you're in the BIM industry, that is ETIM modeling classes. And of course, the integration with other standards and why it's for us so important to be in the bSDD. And some other topics like how to deal with the quest for circular and environmental product characteristics and what's our view on it. Our development roadmap and how you can support our work. So let's kick off. First, the short introduction of ETIM, our philosophy. What do? We are a global standard for technical product classification descriptors. That's it. A single product typology. We put products into classes, and classes have features. Nothing more, nothing less. We are a neutral and open standard. We're not for profit. We're vendor independent. We would like everyone to use it for free, and we are built upon the wisdom of the crowd, bottom up by product managers of manufacturers, maintained by experts. We use a lot of democratic processes which you can follow online, and we are very aware of that we don't want to mess up our data. So data quality is key. We hate redundancy. A product should be classified only into one class. We fight ambiguity, and we love eloquency. Short history. Sorry. That's where you can interfere, Mark. A short overview of our history. We were actually founded by the Dutch Installers Association early 90s, they were struggling with the procurement of so many products. As the wholesalers were becoming bigger and bigger, and their product portfolios became bigger and bigger, finding the right product was really a challenge. And all the errors with products that did not comply to the technical requirements had to be sent back was a huge cost. And they just started from the electrical side. That's where the E comes from, electrical technical information model. That doesn't cover it. It became European technical information model really soon. Germany took an interest and started their own chapter as well. In 2006, ETIM Europe, a community was formed, which became ETIM International, because if you have multiple chapters, you have to have an international organization that coordinates all the work. You don't want to create the same class 3 times. And by now, we have 20 member chapters in 20 countries, but they represent 24 countries. For instance, we have ETIM North America for Canada, US, and Mexico. And we are active in 5 sectors, which are electrical, HVAC and plumbing, tooling and site supplies, construction products. Thanks. And shipbuilding. The ETIM model comprises of over 5,500 product classes. That's what we've been able to accomplish over 30 years of hard work and discussions. So represented in 24 countries, but we are an open standard. We have no idea who uses ETIM, but we were able to get some data from our Google Analytics from the classification management tool, which is openly available. And if you see who accessed ETIM server and where they lived in 2022, you can see that it's really a global standard. I'm really proud to show this to you. If you look at the statistics, the first 2 decades, a lot of classes were added. We're now becoming more at a stable number. There's not much extra products that need to be defined into classes, but there's still a lot of maintenance. We process around 1,800 change requests every year on the model, and we publish a new version around every 2 to 3 years. But if you want, you can also get the latest from yesterday. There's many possibilities to do that. So being in the business of classification for 30 years, we are supported by many branch organizations, mainly from manufacturers and wholesalers, because they already had to deal with the problem. That means that there is a lot of data already available. Hundreds of companies, large companies, companies like Schneider Electric, Sonepar, they bought into this. And the branch organizations that support us all have national data pools where article data is stored, which you can access, which have been classified, which have technical parameters. It's up for grabs. And now ETIM is available through the bSDD. So can you see the potential? That was the short story. Now we go into deep, and we go for the longer version and more technical. So what problem do we solve? We try to solve the problem of avoiding erroneous tasks. I worked for a manufacturer. I was asked to send in spreadsheets with product data, burn DVDs with JPEGs of images of products, Everybody wanted it their way. It was never our way. And we also saw that other people copied our data, but copied old data from old catalogs, which created a lot of errors. And we want to avoid that. And we're in the business of communicating product data, because if you want to be on stock at a large wholesaler, product data needs to be communicated. It needs to be imported into their EP system. It needs to be stocked. It needs to be on their e-commerce websites. But also their customers need to know what they can buy from you at the wholesaler. So everybody needs the same data. And everybody is looking for the right project for the job. And you think, well, that's easy. You ready? But if you look at it from your perspective, you want to build a wall. How many ways are there to build a wall? And then what kind of wall do you want? Something for outside that doesn't need to carry a structure, or is it just an interior wall, non-load bearing? And there still are many choices. You can use bricks, or you can use a framing with a construction board. And in the process, you also need tools and site supplies, health and safety equipment. So you end up with a lot of requirement for products. And then if you say, okay, we'll go for a framing, do you use steel framing or wood framing? You could also have a choice for construction board. You could use plain gypsum, but you could also use waterproof gypsum board, or maybe fireproof fire cement board. Every product choice has consequences for the results. And if you specify results, also the requirements for the products change. And you need to find the right product, right? And I'm not sure if you noticed, but here on the slide, for every picture, I picked 2 or 3 names, which adds up to the complexity, because if you look for a brick for an internal wall, and you look, what is it called? There's so many synonyms that you can think about, and so many extra stuff, which adds to the complexity. So how are we going to find the right product? So then you need features. But if you don't unify them, and let's say you want to build a big e-commerce site for a wholesaler, you would like to find the right product from different manufacturers, right? But what if they don't live in the same continent and use different systems and have their own classification systems? You end up with a lot of features that are not easy to filter. For instance, water absorption. In Europe, we have a standard, and the standard requires a value which is a percentage. In Holland, we have a requirement that has made all these values into a classification. Both are equally great, but if you want to find the right product in a very large database, it's going to be difficult. But it doesn't stop there, because getting the product information at the right place from the manufacturer's perspective, you have to send it not to all the wholesalers only, but also to the specifiers, to the contractors, to the installers. And they also consult with housing corporation, home developers, which have special requirements for the level of quality of their products. So actually everybody wants to have your data. But if we don't speak the same language, And this is just a bunch of manufacturers, wholesalers, and contractors here. We had to draw over 250 lines here with different colors. And this is just a very small portion of the market. If you project it to the whole world, can you see what kind of a mess? So what's the solution then? It's unifying data. It's just simple. Everybody's saying we have to row the same boat. We have to talk the same language. That's okay. But what does that mean for us? Standardization of the classification model and standardization of the product data exchange. If you nail those two in a branch or in a business vertical, then you can really do some magic with software. But you need, as a basis, you need the data. You can build any application you want, but everything needs data. If you want to have a website, you have to write articles. If you want to have an e-commerce site, you need product data. If you want to have a great search engine, you need unified data. So what we did, we started out with a simple data structure. So we define product classes. Classes have synonyms. Synonyms is a treasure trove for your search engine, for your Google Analytics, for your Google ranking. And these product classes have features. But features can be reused. And the length of a screw is in millimeters, and the length of a cable is in meters. So how do you deal with that? So we have the units, features, and the option list values somewhat detached in their own tables, and we apply them to product class mappings. So we're very flexible in that. So that also means that, for instance, the feature color for gypsum board, you only need a couple of colors, white, green, orange, and gray, and not purple and pink, but maybe for another class, you need another set of colors. So we can deal with that. Oh, by the way, can we go one back? All these entities, we don't speak the same language, so you need translations for that. And we deal with that. I'll come back to that later, but we need that in different languages. We want to simplify this. We have product groups. Actually, we use that for our internal use only. I say that because we have had years of discussions on hierarchies, and there's no one single truth, so we just quit that. We say there are other hierarchies which are better and suit their purpose, which you can connect ETIM classes to. So we're down to the product class with its synonyms. They have features, and features have either units or values, and that's it. It's that simple. And that's what is being defined as a single product typology according to a Dutch technical agreement 8611, which is now evolved into ISO 16354. That's about all the ISO standards I'm going to recite today. Sorry for that. So what does that mean? You can have IFC. IFC runs down through HVAC, appliance, pump, and you can specify a type of pump, but we have like 12 classes for all kinds of pumps. Or you have a UNSPSC code or an E-class hierarchy. You can hook that up to ETIM. And how you do it? We just run ETIM, so it's up to you. But apparently, bSDD is the right tool for that. So basically, what we do is we have defined a structure of data where you can define class definitions where we agree which unit we use for the nominal width and according to what standard we measure the water absorption. And then it's up to the companies to make product instances to assign ETIM classes to their product article codes and to load the data according to our structure. And when everybody does that, then you have really good, comparable, filterable product data. So where can you use this? In many systems. You can use it in product information management, master data management systems. That's where the manufacturer starts. They use that to load their ERP system, which is connected to their e-commerce system. And they use that to upload to data pools and object libraries of their own. Wholesale and distribution likes to consume that data into their PIM and MDM system, update their ERP and e-commerce, and also update the data pools with their article information. Contracts and installers, that's what we think is very interested, is can upload ETIM data into their common data environment, because you design stuff, but if you want to build it, you have to buy products. So somewhere along the line, you have to make the link to the supply chain. And I've seen great examples over the last few days from Akka software. But what I haven't seen yet is when you have it in your BIM model, you have the ETIM code. If you connect to a data pool, you say, okay, I've identified a couple of solar panels. I've put in the ETIM class and its features. Now the next step would be to run a query on a national data pool to see who can supply these type of solar panels and what do they cost and do they have it on stock, etc. That's going to be a major step, another major step. But you also need a work preparation. You need to actually buy it. So those people will need it in their systems. You need to invoice all the materials. And so, and you need to get the stuff. So also contractors and installers are interested in ERP and then in data pools. And the same also applies for designers. So there's many opportunities, and I think we only have discovered half of it. But how is the data actually exchanged? There are multiple exchange formats. We're not in the exchange format business. However, we do supply an exchange format to get you started, which is called bMeCAT, a version of bMeCAT, which is a German exchange format standard. We're looking also into master data guidelines. But if you really export ETIM data, you're not exporting language, you are exporting codes, which are not only machine readable, but also human readable, because we limit it to 8 characters. And that's a funny thing, because how do we handle different languages? Well, if you coded everything, you can put language descriptors to these codes. So the classes have codes, and the classes are linked to class names and synonyms at the moment in 23 languages in our database. But I've even seen on LinkedIn, somebody has took the effort to translate it to Catalan in the Barcelona area. So and you have also the synonyms, but be aware, jargon and synonyms in every country, in every language is different. So you cannot do a one-to-one translation from synonyms. So that's being maintained by the national chapters. But everything is coded up to the unit, up to each pick list value. For instance, the word material, you can find it in 23 languages, and it's all linked to the code EF 002169. Very simple, but very powerful, because I could classify my products in Dutch. And this young man there, here in the front, he could get the file and decode it back into Czech language. Or if you're very eager to have ETIM in Swahili, if you put the effort in, and it's very simple, codes, descriptions, and put your own translation behind it, you can use it. It's like an Enigma machine where you just, if you have the codes, you can make anything out of it. So then the next thing is, if you collect all the data together, you can start doing searches. Faceted search is maybe a very common term for that. And then when you find a product, you can view it in one language and instantly switch to another one if you like. So ETIM enables data pooling. I mean, that's one of the primary use cases. And the website of a wholesaler is also a data pool. Remind that. So now the wholesaler is not only in the distribution business of real products, but also in the distribution business of their information. While doing this, we discovered that what you don't want is that wholesalers or contractors are going to classify products from manufacturers. It's not your job. Your job is to stalk the manufacturer to ask them to classify their products. It's their responsibility. And when you're dealing with technical features, there's also a liability issue. I don't want to exaggerate it, but it's their responsibility. They know best what their R&D department is up to, when products are changing. But when you get it right, and you have a national data pool, or maybe even an international data pool, I'm not trying to curse in the church, but you could have it worldwide, product information, because you only make the product once. It's the same for everybody. If you could query that database, you get always the best answer to find the technical compatible product. And for the manufacturer, they just can send one file to one place and they update it for everybody, instead of filling out all these spreadsheets, burning DVDs like I did in the past. And on the other hand, wholesalers can update their e-commerce systems, their ERP systems, just by downloading one big file on Friday afternoon with all the changes made by 200 suppliers. How cool is that? There are also other use cases, because if you're into designing business and you don't want to look on websites for wholesalers or link a bunch of APIs, you could also auto-populate a data lake of your own and use that. But what about business intelligence structures? You can have expansion tanks and safety valves, but some of them are suitable for drinking water systems and some of them are not. But if you want to have like an overview of the turnover or profit you make on drinking water related products, you could use ETIM classification and their features to filter out all your article codes and all your sales records. But you can also use it to speed up your work planning, quickly find the right product that you need on time. If somebody doesn't have it, who else has it? Yeah, and the cool thing is, if we could link that all to the virtual environment of BIM models, that would be great. So how is this all governed? How do we prevent this database from becoming a big mess? It's hard, I can say. And we have 20 chapters which organize working groups from local people working at the manufacturer, knowing best what's the right feature or property for the products. They do proposals. I don't say they do it right all the time. So sometimes there are conflicts that are solved in technical committees per sector or per specialization. And overall technical issues are discussed in the General Technical Committee, where we discuss maybe disruptive changes on the ETIM model. We are supported by global industry members, and for their support, we allow them a seat at this technical committee table. We have a general assembly of our country members, where we decide on budget and strategy and stuff like that. And for the rest, ETIM International is 2 people only. All the work is done on the local level. We just make sure that everybody follows the procedure and procedures and guidelines, and we make sure that this ship is sailing course. So our governance fundamentals rely heavily on a big document of 30 plus pages called the ETIM International Classification Guidelines. And that's a summoning of thou shall not, thou shall do this. And it's very, very detailed, but it helps us. We are an association, so we have statutes. So everything regarding how we run our business is handled in there. Officially, it has a stamp from a notary, and for the rest, our main goal is adoption. We want people to use it and to solve their problems with it. And in order to achieve adoption, we need to develop our standards further. We need to find collaborations, and we need to expand. And we need to tell about it in all the possible ways, and that's why I'm here today. So with what other standards do we comply? My first and lame answer is we are a standardization body in itself. So we comply to the ETIM standard. But as I said before, we are founded as a single product typology according to the NTA 8611, which later evolved into the ISO 16354. And we are founded on the BOMOS principles. BOMOS principles is something issued by the Dutch government. It's about the maintenance, and it's like a view on the maintenance and development of open standards. As a government, you don't want to follow standards that are not maintained, for instance. So they have some guidelines on that. So we follow that. I did a detailed study on how compliant are ETIM properties to ISO 23386. I found some issues, so I cannot say we're fully compliant, but if you're interested into the details, just drop me an email, I'll send you the report if you want to go that deep into detail. However, as we are integrated into the bSDD, I guess we're maybe after all compliant, because bSDD is compliant to all these ISO standards. And then you can say, well, maybe why aren't we changing to be more compliant? The issue is we're 30 years underway. We have a large ecosystem of major companies that bought into ETIM, that have invested, that have bought software from many PIM systems and other systems that have implemented ETIM. If we make a breaking change, the phone won't stop ringing. And first the software vendors will ring, and then their customers will ring, and they'll raise hell on us. So we are very careful to do that. It's not that we don't want it. We would like to look into it, but it has to be done thoughtfully. So with the bSDD, we are very happy because that's something very compliant. Everybody uses bSDD, so if you can use ETIM through the bSDD and everybody's happy, we're happy. So these BOMOS principles I mentioned earlier, in short, is it's just a bunch of common sense principles. So a standard needs to be maintained, and maintenance and development is not a project. It's not a one-off thing. It's a continuous task that needs continuous resources. And these need financed. I would like to do this just as a volunteer, but I have a family, I have a mortgage, so we need to sort that problem out. And in a situational process, something different can mean for each standard. That can mean something different for each standard. Some standards need a lot of maintenance. Some standards are very easy and actually only need a review every 10 years. Unfortunately, products change on a daily basis. So our standard needs a lot of maintenance. So we need a very well-oiled machine that handles that. And the openness of the standard is determined by the architecture of its maintenance and development process. And don't try to reinvent the wheel, but try to focus on improving the wheel. So if we hear about the digital product passport in Europe and the project about that, we immediately get very worried. It's not for us, but because we will continue to do our thing, but for the people that will put a lot of time in discovering what he has discovered in over 30 years already. There's no such thing as the standard of all standards. Every standard has its own space and function and level of openness. We care about product details. IFC is more about higher hierarchy and structure. And NLSFP has a specific function in the Netherlands in BIM common data environments. And standardization is the basis of interoperability with collaboration as the ultimate goal. So if you want to collaborate, you first need to talk the same language. So we all understand that. Then next thing is there is a lot of discussion about open BIM. Everything needs to be open. And I found 10 criteria of openness. And I just measured ETIM according to these criteria. And the first thing is it needs to have an open meeting. An open standard needs to have an open meeting. Everybody could participate. Well, informative meetings are held by local ETIM countries. These are open. I'm very open to discuss everything with ETIM about ETIM with you. But managing the standard and having an influence, we use that a little bit as a leverage in order to raise the funding for our standard. So the General Assembly, the technical committees and classification committees are only accessible for contributing members. And we're not talking about tons of money. Our local entities only asked for a small membership fee, so they could run their show on their working groups and stuff like that. This next one is consensus. We're all about consensus. Democratic processes are all over our governance structure. And we're only voting on strategic stuff in the General Assembly if it's absolutely needed, but we try to avoid it at all times. Consensus also means that if somebody processes a change request on a specific class for an extra feature and you disagree, you can online post a protest or an addition to that. And that's open. So that also accounts for open meeting. A due process, a complete set of processes as are described in the status of the association and in the ETIM standardization guidelines. So we are all about these processes. Processes should be followed. Otherwise, it immediately becomes a mess. One world, we have a very strict neutrality policy, and we refrain from any kind of vendor lock-in or political statements. So I guess that's common in the bildingSMART world as well. Open intellectual property, we are licensed under Creative Commons, or we're in the process of licensing ourselves under Creative Commons. However, for some language translations, these files you require may require a contributing membership because it's the copyright of the national chapter. They put in the work, they need to finance that work, and sometimes they ask for a contribution on their part. And we don't have anything to say about that. But there are some languages openly available and some are not. Open change. So anybody can suggest changes. Sometimes you require to be a member, and that can be arranged. By the way, a great example is the Electric Distribution Association in the UK. They made all their members automatically member of ETIM. They handled it at once, so everybody's a member. So everybody who is part of the EDA in the UK can suggest changes just by phoning the EDA and say, can you please submit that change into the ETIM stuff? And then it's all automated. We review the request and then it's done. So open documents. If you're interested in a model or in the guidelines, everything you need you can find on our website. Just go to the download section. It's there. Open interface, we have an API which you can request access to. We give it out to anybody who would like it. And we have a support. You can get support from our local chapters. If they don't succeed in supporting you, it'll end up in my desk and we'll support you in any way we can. So, governance covered, I guess. Was a bit boring, but you know it's important to show you that we really care to supply high quality data, and we need that. So how is the change process going? How is that handled? The best practice is to create a working group with people of the same industry. For instance, if you take a cable tray, you would need people from Nidax, from Legrand, from Obo Betterman, and people that know the products. And they look into the class as defined at the moment, and they say, oh, we have a necessity for a new feature, or maybe we should merge two classes into one because we feel there is some redundancy or ambiguity. Those things are discussed down to the last dot or comma, and they are processed into a a, uh, change request. And that change request is undergoing a very specific set of phases. They submit the proposal, then it ends up in either my mailbox or my associate. We review it in initial control, and we review it like hawks, because we have the 30 pages of the guideline next to ourselves, and we have all our principles, and we say, okay, did you file also a requester company or name? Because it's not like anybody can just simply request something. It has to become from some manufacturer. Then we, when we approve it, still it has to go into a discussion phase of 60 days, where, for instance, change requests from Sweden can be reviewed by Germany, and they can either agree with it or disagree. And if there's a disagreement, we will tend to seek for some common understanding on that. If nobody objects, then it goes into post-check, and we do some last checks to see if everything's perfect, and then we push it to approval, and then it will be in the next release of ETIM. That's simply how it's done. And that's what I do on a daily basis, review work of other people. Within the process, the classes can have multiple statuses. They have multiple versions. So in between versions, you can have multiple change requests. And to have like some kind of overview, we have class status. So they can be either under construction, ready for publication, published, or deleted. So ETIM 9 consists of all the class versions that are published. If you're interested in the latest of the latest, you could also go for a version published, or if there is any approved RFC, I'll take it too. So, exchanging data. As I said, we're not in the exchanging data business. We provide the structure, but we are dependent on it being exchanged. And as I said before, who's responsible for what? If you're talking about information delivery specifications, our vision is technical product data has to come from the manufacturer. Everybody needs to reuse that set of data. However, the manufacturer has a sales price and a minimum packing quantity and GTIN code and stuff like that. But the wholesaler has a whole different set of data. And when you retail it, it becomes maybe repackaged as well. So there are multiple instances of the product through the value chain. That's something that not many people understand in where we come from. Manufacturers have to understand it as well. For them, there's only one truth, our product. They have one line. But when you start collecting data in a data pool, you have like the product data, which is like the product GTIN code, descriptions, pictures, certificates, ETIM class and its features and stuff like that, certificates. But we found out you can buy it at 20 different places, and they all have their prices, rebates, delivery time, stock, yes or no. So you have to separate that sometimes. So when you exchange that, you have to exchange two things. Well, in practice, there are local product data exchange formats, like FabDis in France and DICO in the Netherlands, which is part of a larger EDI message set. We supply a version of BME code ourselves. We are working on a improved version, because bMeCAT hasn't been updated as a standard since 2005, and everything we add to our own guideline is a user-defined extension. So we have more user-defined extensions than the standard bMeCAT descriptors. So for now, it's time to work on a new exchange format for that. But we're very happy if somebody else comes up with a standard and wants to include ETIM in it. Everybody's free to do that. And we have also been asked to manage the European Master Data Guidelines, which was initiated a document by the FEST, which is the European Federation for the Sanitary and Heating Wholesale Trade. They said we want to have a fast set of master data with validity rules and stuff like that. And they asked us to manage that, and we're basing our new format on that, as well as on all the good stuff that we find of all the local data exchange formats. So what tools do we have to implement ETIM or to work on the ETIM model? We have a classification management tool. We have a modeling management tool, which I will explain later. We have an ETIM viewer app. We have ETIM API. We have also the bMeCAT file certification tool. And we have a community website. So the classification management tool, this is where you can find everything about the class, all the change request processes from 2009 on, all the versions. You can compare versions. You can mark classes as your favorite. When it's your favorite, you get push emails when somebody else is issuing a change request. This is my daily tool. This is where we review the classes. And for modeling classes, which we'll explain after this, we have a similar tool built. There's also an ETIM viewer, and the ETIM viewer is a app to quickly look up a class and its features. It's mobile friendly. We have an API, and for the insiders, a Swagger page, and you can apply for credentials there. And the API looks like that. We have some example queries to go with that as well. So we also have a bMeCAT exchange format certification tool, which means you can validate it against the bMeCAT guideline. You can validate the XML against the XSD, and you get a full report of what's wrong. You can also validate it against certain ETIM releases. You can do country validations, because I'm not going to bore you with the discussions on the length of a description of a product, but in every country, we seem to need a different length, or even 2 rules of 40 characters. So we have some subsets there. There's a detailed error report, but you can also acquire a validation certificate that you can put out on your website site as a manufacturer to say, oh, I did my homework. See, I have a certificate. And this is what it looks like. And that's an example of the certificate. How are we on time, Mark? Do we have... Well, we're quite good. Now we're underway. So now we get to some more interesting stuff. Integration with other standards. We're being asked for collaboration many times. And the question is always, can we map to ETIM? Yes, you can map to ETIM, but we're only 2 persons. We're not going to do it because we simply don't have the time. But now we are fully integrated into bSDD, and we're a classification standard with 30 years under the belt, and supported by and implemented by the industry. So there are 1 million products, records available somewhere in the cloud. So by using bSDD and referencing ETIM, you could hook that up to your BIM model. As I said, we're a monotype, mono-level classification system, which you can link to many other structures, for which the bSDD is a very good vehicle. I'm in the process of discovering how that works, must say that. So I can't show you how it's done, but I guess Arthur Tomczak can tell you about that. So what's our place in this whole world? So if you look at the top of the slide, you see the classification structure, model, and governance. That's our database, which is being used by manufacturers and wholesales to exchange product data. And sometimes they use centralized data pools. And the contractor or installer, when they want to buy stuff, they also need to know what's in store. So they try to also get a file for that to update their systems. On the other hand, you have the designers and BIM modelers that build stuff with data dictionaries. They use BIM software applications. And there are PDT libraries being formed at the moment, which would like to use bSDD references. So us being in the bSDD opens up this whole world of common data environments where we could be in. So our dream is, when you end up with a BIM model, and sometimes I show it to manufacturers, I show that like an open BIM model of an MEP installation, all these fancy drawings, and I say, can you imagine how many products are in there? And that really gets their mind going, because they are looking like, okay, turnover. I can make money there. But how are you going to get the order from all those products? So you want to be pre-specified. So what if we could design something and say, first we start out generic. So we have a light fixture, or we need a door. And later you specify it needs to be a door with these descriptors. And based on that, the next phase would be, we need a door from this brand with that article code, and we buy it at that store because they have it in stock and they can supply it on time. If we can manage to do that's what my big dream is for the future. So now we have this classification model, and we went a little bit further, because me working at a manufacturer, I once thought as a marketing manager that it would be better spend money to spend it on 3D libraries instead of advertising, which made sense. But I got into a world of hurt, because I quickly found out that there are 40 different 3D formats, and everybody needs a different tweak in the library, and there's a lot of commercial parties that want to help you build your library and take your money. And then I say, but I already have objects made by them. And then they say, no, but that's Revit, we are in Tekla. Or they say, that's Revit, but we can't use it because we have other special features in it. We ended up spending a lot of money and only covering maybe 20% of everybody's needs. On the other hand, I talked to BIM modelers. They said, well, I went to school thinking that I could design buildings of the future. But as it turns out, three out of 5 days, I'm scrolling over the internet, searching for content. Then I say, what do you do when you find it? Well, I put it on my left screen, and on the right screen, I start all over. because it's never in the right format. It doesn't have the library as how I want it. So there's a huge gap there. But you can't build buildings without virtual products, right? You can't build virtual buildings without the virtual content. Big demand for content. And then somebody said, well, what about parametric families? That's great, parametric families. All the companies in the software world said, well, we'll build you your parametric family. But then you started out filling out these spreadsheets with the same sizes all over again, but only with a different descriptor behind it. That's a lot of redundant work, right? So, but then you only had specific BIM objects. But what about if you want to design something for the government? You need a generic object, which has, but what's the shape of that and how you deal with that? So basically, if you look at a cable tray, it has a width and a length and a height and a thickness of the material, which was already in the ETIM class. And the data was already there. Maybe not 100%, but it was already there. And that got us thinking. In the Netherlands, they did a big project. Let's try do a proof of concept. And they came up with 360 generic objects that everybody uses once in a while in a BIM model. And they said, let's standardize the parameterization, standardize the parameter. And all we do is supply a reference drawing. And whoever is using that data to draw a 3D object can use it, but all they get from the manufacturer is not their library, which is not so good because it's never in the right format. They get the data, only the data. And you can use it in your software however you like it. And that's what we're trying to launch at the moment. We have some initiatives in the Netherlands and in Germany where they have databases. This gentleman here at the front is also looking into this in the Czech Republic. If you could get the data from the manufacturer, linked, live linked, there's a whole world of possibilities opening up. This is what the reference, can you click one more? Yeah. The reference drawing is actually meaning you could go to an online data pool, find a product from a manufacturer, and then based on the data that's in the database, generate on the fly a 3D model. And you can download it in whatever format. Or you could integrate it into your own BIM application. We needed some extra features. So we have added the 2D parametric reference drawing. But we also needed 2 extra data types. Sometimes you want to emphasize the position of a connection and also in which direction the connection is facing. And for calculation purposes, for modeling purposes, hydraulic calculations always come with graphs with KV values or pump curves. So you need matrix points. And we also quickly discovered in the HVAC on the HVAC side, if you have a fitting with 4 connections, and it could be flanges or threaded connections, these are all standardized and they are reused. So we had threaded connections in 100 different classes. If something changed on the definition of these drawings of the connection, we had to issue 100 RFCs. So we thought that's a redundancy that we have to kill straight away. So the connection types are also modeling classes in itself, which we refer to in the actual modeling class. So now Our model, this is highly simplified again, is changed a little bit. So a product can be assigned a product class, but also a modeling class. And modeling classes can have a many-to-many relationship to product classes, because a vessel has a specific shape, but it can be an expansion vessel or a water buffer tank, but they still have the same shape. So you can reuse the same geometric class. So these modeling classes have port codes, and on each port code you can assign connection type classes. And all these classes use the same pool of features, units, and values. So now, when you have these objects transformed into 3D objects of your likings, and you can put RFC in it, but you could also use Revit standards, international Revit standards if you like, or something else, do it your way. You can start with a generic model, which has a generic data set and generic sizes. You can make them a little bit bigger, because space claim is very interesting, is very important in the start. And later along the phase, you can load it with a specific candidate product, and to see what is the effect on clash controls and on the calculations and stuff like that. And you can update and validate it throughout the whole building lifecycle, even after 10 years in maintenance. And the coolest thing is, as a manufacturer, I can now influence the design of buildings while they are being designed, or even while they are being built or maintained, because I can let people know by updating to a data pool that the cable tray has become a little bit higher or a little bit wider, because that suits our production process better. But it has a user effect on that. And at this moment, this is only being discovered when you are really actually building the product, the building, and you're on site, and you're looking like, hey, this doesn't fit anymore. But we saw it in the design and documentation. So now you can influence that. And you design something, you quote it, and you sign the contract. But in the process of getting all the permits, 2 years pass by easily. But 2 years in a product assortment of a manufacturer, so much can change. So much can change. So what are the benefits of using ETIM-MC? By the way, this is not the standard that is going to change, is going to be competing with all the other standards. The mere purpose is only standardization of the parametrization. Yeah. So you can get, only data from the manufacturer. That's all it does. So that's its sole purpose, and you can use it in so many things. But the benefits are, you can get BIM objects like you want with up-to-date validated data from the manufacturer. That's what you want, right? Because if you build a drawing based on some measurements you take out of an old printed catalog, you digitize stuff, but it's still a copy of a copy, which is far from validated, right? And now you can start with a generic object and make it supplier specific later, simply by just loading some extra data. Just run some web services. There are proof of concepts ready. They're working. We've dealt with that. Well, I didn't, but somebody in the industry. But I can show you to them. The cool thing is also, 10 years from now, you can revalidate your BIM objects. Are the spare parts still available? If not, what's the consequence? Do they have a successor, and what's their dimensions? For the manufacturer, they are excused from all this technological revolutionary stuff going on in the BIM world. Their core business is producing stuff and providing data, just providing data, so everybody can use that. And as a bonus, they get the direct influence on the existing BIM models. And wholesale, do they have a role? Yes, because when you have connected the supply chain in your BIM model, you can now get into discussions with big wholesalers to improve your logistics on the construction site. So going back to the framed wall, this is a real-life example of a class we recently issued in ETIM modeling classes. That's the class for construction boards. A board has a length, a thickness, and a width, and it has maybe multiple layers, and these layers have a thickness as well. And they have an edge finishing, which could be half-lap joints or a groove, a tongue. But that's about all the flavors you can have. But this modeling class links to about 12 to 15 construction board type classes, like gypsum board, fiber board. All these boards that I showed you are linking to that class. So how cool is that? You could start out with a framing wall, you can design it, draw it, and you go back to the contractor that is paying you money, and you can say, well, we could do fiber cement, which is fire safe, but that's the price for that, or we could do plain gypsum. And when they decide, you just change out the ETIM classes and all the product data behind it, and nothing breaks in your BIM model. Something to discover. So also mentioned facility management. Let's go back. Let's fast forward in time, and yeah, something breaks in your building, and the facility manager is being called to the site and says, "This thing is broken." And what is this thing? I know it because I sold them for many years, expansion tanks. But then the next question is, does it have a label? No, the label is not there anymore. What's the volume? But also, what's the maximum working pressure? Very interested, very important to have the right maximum working pressure for a expansion tank, and also a pre-charge, otherwise it won't work. And you also have very clear diameter restrictions here. So if you know the class, you can do stuff like that. Or if you have modeled it, and the model contains the product with the class, you could even put a QR code on it to make it fancy, and then it points to the right position in the building, and you can just get the whole data dictionary, the complete dossier of that product. You can maybe see when it has been revised, but now you can also do a query if you can still buy it, and where you can buy it, and who has it on stock, because this thing is broken and it needs to be fixed in 3 hours. It's all possible. It's there. It's up for the taking. So let's do this. Then we also get questions about, we need to do something about the environment. I mean, it's been in talks here as well. I've run a group when I was working for ETIM Netherlands, also dealing with that question. And it's hard, it's difficult. As much as we want it, it's very hard. And we had to really define what is our role in this. We are in the classification business. We are not the experts. We quickly found out, we got into discussions whether wooden things are good or bad for the environment because wood, you can regrow wood, but if you chop all the trees at once, it's bad for the environment. Those are discussions they can go on without on end, or like features proposed like 100% biodegradable. What defines 100% biodegradable? Polypropylene is biodegradable. It takes 2,000 years perhaps, and ends up in microplastic. I have no idea. I'm not the expert. But we do have the vehicles for exchanging environmental data. Some properties are very product specific and sometimes are being issued by eco-design rules for luminaires, for instance. And some things are generic. And we learned, as always, that experts from specific product domains, they know best what they need. And then I get back to the earlier slides. Who is responsible for what? Packaging materials, if you repack that, there's somebody else responsible there. So how are you going to handle that? Through the exchange format. But we have all these articles. So bear that in mind. Then where would you put stuff? So where does it belong? In the ETIM class or somewhere else? I mean, net weight of the product will never be a feature of an ETIM class because it's already in the master data. We don't like redundancy. EPD certificates, you have the ISO 22057 for EPD certificates. It's already there. You can attach an EPD certificate to a master data file. No need to put all these features into an ETIM class. It's already there. LCA certificate, same question. Refurbishable, yes or no? Is something refurbishable, yes or no? That's a cool feature. We can implement that, but not in an ETIM class because it applies to all the products. It has to be in the product data exchange format. And it's already there. Now we get to interesting stuff. Eco-design requirements for circulation pumps like energy efficiency index and the MEI values. I'm not sure anymore what that means, but that should go into the class for a built-in circulation pump, as an example. And who decides that? Not me. The classification committee, where people from Grundfos, Relo, and KSB and all the other pump manufacturers, they tell us what to do. They propose that. They follow those rules, and they should. But as I said, we're the vehicle. It's doable. You can do it. You can find it, all those kind of properties already in ETIM classes. Another one is a biological durability class according to EN 13986. It's actually a feature in ETIM, and it's being put into classes for multiplex OSB board, wood fiber board, and chipboard. Also handled by the classification committee. Done. It's there. We even have a new class for photovoltaic roof tiles. Roof tiles with photovoltaic cells in it. It's there. So as long as you participate in ETIM, you can make it better together with us. But we can't do it on our own. So that's how we can contribute to a better and safer environment. There are some common issues though. Things that we came across over time. For instance, last year, we were very glad to add to OSB board a feature called percentage of recycled materials. That would be great, right? If you can filter on products that have the most percentage of recycled materials. But how much recycled material is available when you start producing on Monday and how much is available on Friday morning? And how is it measured? No idea. So We added it in RFC 37423, and unfortunately we had to delete it again because somebody said, well, they call bullshit on this, and we don't want bullshit in our classes. So we took it out. But, that's life. That's how we try to maintain it. Another one is we can put material features. Materials. What's the material of a product? And then you get into a whole level of detail of material decomposition, because you can talk about plastic or steel, or you could say plastic. What kind of plastic? Yeah, thermoplastic polymer. Yeah, what kind of thermoplastic polymer? Yeah, polyethylene terephthalate, or something like that. It's on the slide. This can go on forever. There are so many types of brass, for instance. Some countries, they want lead-free brass. Others, they want something else with brass. And another thing is, take, for instance, this projector. How many materials are in it? Or take a luminaire, a LED luminaire. There are some very strange materials in it, and they have to already present a REACH document per microgram. What heavy metal is already used in there? It's already there. Do we need to put it in the glass? It's a tough discussion. But HVAC people, they say, well, you can talk about material all day, but that's not going to solve the problem, because you can use a small pump in a system which uses less energy. But if it's too small, it runs all day trying to make up, and then ends up using a lot of energy. And if you put your building in the wrong spot and you use a glass wall on the south side, your airco is having a hard time to keep up with the climate. And that's going to cost a lot. So their material alone is not sufficient enough. You cannot select, by simply selecting products, make up for that. But there was also a lack of resources at the manufacturer. We had a proof of concept data model with very clever stuff in it. All the manufacturers had a say in it. And then the next step was, can we get some data from you? Then they said, well, here's our LCA certificate. We have EPD. Can you look at the PCDS initiative from GS1? And do we need another standard? And we didn't get it. I even got a cable lobbyist saying that, well, we shouldn't look at the material of the cables. We have to look at the lifespan of the cable, because if the lifespan is too short, you have to dig it up all the time. That's also costing money. We ran into the same discussions again. And some information, like material decomposition, is very competition sensitive, especially when we thought it would be great if you get parts all over the world, you have a very huge footprint. So if you have that information, nobody wanted to give that. It's classified. So I don't have the answers, but we're willing to participate and share our thoughts about that. We have a development roadmap. Some ideas that we're thinking about is a feasibility. We got a request from PDT Norway. Can we use the ETIM structure and its data and its features as a fuel to kickstart the PDT project? I'm trying to figure out how to make a Cypher script to load ETIM as a graph database. That's a hobby project for myself. I'm not sure if anybody's interested in that, but please let me know. next step when we are in bSDD is to experiment with links. Can we link IFC entities to ETIM classes and how it's done? I think bSDD is the way to go. ETIM modeling classes needs to be also published in bSDD. Could be great. Working on that with artists together. We have a new exchange data model. Well, we are thinking about grouping and labeling features. The more features you add to a class, you need some structure to quickly label it, like geometric or like hydraulic calculation features. At the moment, references to product standards are being placed in the description field. That's a quick solution, but maybe we should put that in a different field. And for modeling classes, as it's being new, we need extra staff to manage that. And for that, we need extra resources. So we've come up with a proposal for a business business case, how to do that. But we also need some extra technical committees and stuff like that. So we are implementing this at the moment. But we're always open to find out what should be on our roadmap. And if you want to have influence on that, there's an open invitation from us. Become a member of ETIM in a local country. Participate in working groups, in technical committees. And most of all, start using the ETIM model in your projects via the bSDD. And we're very interested in the results you put in with that. So, are we on time? No. We're not doing that, but thank you. Any questions? Wait for the mic so the people online can follow it, if they're still there.
So I'm Russell Steinman. You talked about the geometry, which maybe could be generated also. And you showed already a very detailed geometry. And BIM users made the experience when they use all this complex geometry from the manufacturers, they fill up their models with geometry they actually don't need.
Yeah.
So
I understand where you're going.
In former years, when we painted it by 2D, we had symbols.
Yeah.
So do you go into
this? Good question. Yeah, because we are in discussions with multiple implementers of modeling classes. There, we are discovering together where we are going, and all we say in our guidelines is that our 2D drawings only a reference drawing, so we are not laying down the law on the level of detail of the geometry. We only advise to keep it as low as simple. But in Germany, for instance, there's a project, ETIM BIM, powered by Cadenas, and they want to keep it so simple that they turn up with only boxes, length, width, height. But then my question is, why do you need a standard to define length, width, and height? So the position of when you define in geometry, for instance, the connections, you can find them back in the data, and from the data you can do analysis. When you have an electrical appliance hanging on the wall, you also need a wire to do that, so you can run checks on that. But basically we say low level of geometry, high level of information, and that's what we say. But how you do it, in what 3D format, we leave it up to everybody. I've seen proof of concepts from people that had a switch, like how do you say that, coarse, medium, and fine of the same thing, just by using some parameters, and they had their interpretation of a 3D model on that. And they said, well, we can just switch between that. If you put it on fine, you can drink coffee, and when you come back, maybe it's done. But if you could also use it very coarse. But we try to get out of that discussion.
I mean, CityGML, they have such an understanding of level of details for the city models. So there could be something which could be adopted. I have another question. You talked about your dream to bridge the gap, what you're doing, and then delivering the stuff and selling the stuff. Have you heard about this pro-material initiative in Germany?
Not yet. What's it called?
Pro-material.
Pro-material.
So maybe I should link you with them.
Okay.
That could be maybe an answer to your dream.
Yeah, well, I just how they do it. So we supply the structure and ETIM, and we have a hard time convincing manufacturers to do the work for this, because they say, "Oh, I just invested in Revit models on the map content of the EU, and so why should I supply this as well?" And that's a hard task. And even the discussion on the geometry, when we show examples of cable trays being produced in those implementations, they say, it's always the marketing manager that pays for it. Yeah. And he says, I can't recognize our design in that. But I have to explain to them, the BIM modeler doesn't care. And they want something that they can work with. It's about the information behind it. But that's something that we'll need to do over time. And we need a lot of effort to explain that to people. Yeah. Any more questions? Online questions, maybe?
No, there are no online. So
are there people online, or is it just us?
There are people online watching, and that recording will be available afterwards, so we can watch it. But thank you everyone for attending. Have a good break, and thanks once again to Jeroen.
Thank you.